The night that began it all. The night had started quietly, almost too quietly for a world that often surrounded Keanu Reeves with flashing cameras and loud voices. It was not a red carpet, not a stage, not a place where the world demanded smiles and polished words. It was something far smaller, something softer. It was a simple evening, a sweet date that seemed harmless at first glance, yet that one night would bring Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock closer than ever before, in ways neither of them had imagined. The first minutes of the evening already carried an unusual magic. Keanu walked into a small restaurant tucked away from the city noise. The place was warm, lit by soft yellow lamps filled with the gentle sound of piano music drifting through the air. It was not the kind of place chosen for fame. It was chosen for peace. When Sandra arrived, her laughter was the first thing he heard. It was a sound he had always admired. Bright, real, carrying both strength and gentleness. People often believed their bond was built only on movies, on sets, on lines spoken to cameras. But the truth was far deeper. Years of friendship had already tied them together, threads of trust woven quietly while the world looked elsewhere. Yet that night something shifted. They sat at a small corner table away from curious eyes. Sandra leaned forward, her hair falling slightly to the side as she teased him about his choice of wine. Keanu smiled in that quiet, almost shy way he always did, as if even laughter was something he gave with care. But beneath their laughter, there was something heavier. Keanu had always carried silence like armor. He listened more than he spoke, his kindness often hiding the depth of his own pain. Sandra knew this. She had seen it in the way his eyes sometimes drifted away when crowds cheered, in the way he spoke of life with gentleness but also with an ache that never fully left him. The first hook of the night came when Sandra set her glass down and asked softly, "Keanu, do you ever get tired of being strong?" He looked at her, his lips parting slightly as if to answer, but then he stopped. Silence filled the table for a long moment. Finally his voice came low and steady. "Every day, but I keep going because kindness is stronger than pain. It has to be." Her eyes softened. "You don't always have to carry it alone." His gaze held hers, and for the first time he let the silence fall away. "I know, that's why being here with you. It feels different. It feels safe." Her breath caught, her smile fading into something deeper, something more fragile. "Safe?" she repeated. He nodded. "Safe to be myself. Safe to let someone see me, even the broken parts." The piano music played softly in the background, but the world outside seemed far away. In that small restaurant, it was only them. As the evening continued, they spoke about simple things, memories from their younger days, mistakes they had made, small joys they held close. But beneath every word was a thread pulling them closer. The night took a turn when they left the restaurant and walked together through the quiet streets. The city was alive in the distance, but here, under the dim streetlights, it was calm. Sandra wrapped her coat tighter, the cool air brushing against her. Keanu noticed and gently placed his jacket over her shoulders without saying a word. She looked at him, her eyes bright. "You always do that," she whispered. "Do what?" he asked softly. "Give more than you take." He smiled faintly, but his voice carried honesty. "It's the only way I know how to live." For a moment, they stopped walking. Sandra's heart raced. The quiet between them was not empty. It was full, heavy with everything unspoken through years of friendship. Her eyes searched his face and she whispered, "Keanu, have you ever wondered if maybe we were meant to be more than just friends?" His chest tightened. He had thought it many times, but his silence had always been his answer. Now her words cracked that silence wide open. His eyes lowered, then returned to hers. "Yes," he said softly. "I've wondered, but I was afraid." Her lips parted, her breath catching. "Afraid of what?" His voice trembled, though it remained steady. "Afraid that if I spoke, I might lose you, and losing you would break me more than silence ever could." Her eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of something deeper. She reached for his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. "Then maybe it's time we stop being afraid." In that moment, under the quiet streetlights, something shifted forever. It was no longer just a friendship carried through years of laughter and silence. It was a beginning, fragile yet undeniable, and so, what started as one sweet date became the night where truth finally found its voice, and two hearts that had always walked side by side began to step closer than ever before. The fragile beginning, the night after their sweet date, Keanu and Sandra both found themselves unable to sleep. The quiet of their homes felt heavier than usual, filled with the echoes of words they had finally spoken. "Maybe it's time we stop being afraid." Those words repeated in Sandra's heart again and again, filling her with both hope and fear. Keanu sat by his window, looking out at the city lights. For years he had built his life around silence, giving kindness to the world but rarely letting the world into his heart. But last night something had changed. Her hand in his, her voice trembling yet strong, had broken through walls he thought could never fall. The first hook of the evening came the next day when Sandra called him. Her voice was light at first, but he could sense the uncertainty beneath it. "Keanu, can we meet? I think we need to talk about us." They met at a quiet cafe, the kind of place where no one asked questions, where people came only for warmth and peace. Keanu arrived first, sitting near the window, his hands folded, his heart racing. When Sandra walked in, wearing a simple coat and a nervous smile, the room seemed to brighten. She sat down, her fingers fidgeting with her cup. For the first few minutes they spoke about simple things, the weather, work, the news. But then Sandra took a deep breath, her eyes locking with his. "Keanu, last night felt different. It felt like we crossed a line we can't step back from." Keanu nodded slowly. "I know, and I don't want to step back. But I'm afraid of what comes next." Her brows furrowed softly. "Afraid of what?" His voice lowered, his honesty raw. "Afraid of the world. Afraid of the cameras, the headlines, the people who will twist something pure into something ugly. I've lived long enough to know how cruel voices can be." Sandra reached across the table, her hand covering his. "I know the world can be cruel, but I also know something else. Kindness is stronger. Respect is stronger. What we have, what we could have, is stronger." His chest tightened at her words. She had always been the one to find light in heavy places, to make laughter where silence lived. And now she was offering him something greater than hope. She was offering courage. But even as their bond grew, conflict arrived sooner than they expected. A group of strangers at another table recognized them, their eyes wide with curiosity. Whispers spread quickly. One of them pulled out a phone, the lens aimed directly at them. Keanu noticed first. His hand tightened around Sandra's, his voice soft but urgent. "They're watching." She followed his gaze and saw the camera. Her heart pounded. "What do we do?" He leaned closer, his eyes steady. "We don't hide. Not if this is real." And so instead of pulling away, Keanu placed his hand gently on hers, letting the world see. The whispers grew louder, and the flashes of cameras outside the window began. But in that moment, the choice was made. They would not let fear erase what had begun. Later, when they left the cafe, reporters were already waiting, shouting questions, pressing forward with hungry eyes. "Is it true? Are you two together? When did this start?" Sandra felt her body tense, her steps falter, but Keanu guided her gently through the chaos, his arm steady around her shoulders. He whispered, "Just breathe. We'll get through this." That night, the first stories appeared online. Photos of them together at the cafe filled headlines, accompanied by wild guesses and gossip. Some celebrated, some doubted, some twisted. In her living room, Sandra stared at the screen, fear rising in her chest. "It's happening already," she whispered. "They're going to turn this into something we can't control." Keanu sat beside her, his expression calm though his heart was heavy. "We can't control the world," he said softly, "but we can control how we live through it. And if this is real, if we truly want this, then no storm can end it." Her eyes softened, tears forming. "Do you really believe that?" His voice carried a strength that steadied her. "I do, because I believe in you, and I believe in us." For the first time, she let the fear melt into his words. She leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. In that quiet moment, they were no longer two stars surrounded by noise. They were just two people, fragile yet brave, stepping into something unknown but true. Yet even as they found comfort, they did not know what waited ahead. For every step closer, new challenges would rise. Challenges that would test not only their bond but the very strength of their hearts. When the storm grew louder, the morning after their cafe meeting became a headline. The world seemed to turn its eyes toward Keanu and Sandra. Television shows replayed the photos. Websites published endless stories, and fans filled social media with both excitement and doubt. The sweetness of their fragile beginning was now tangled with voices that were louder than ever. The first minutes of that day were hardest for Sandra. She sat by her kitchen table, scrolling through her phone, her hands trembling. Some comments praised her courage, others questioned her intentions, and a few were cruel. She pressed the screen off, her chest heavy with fear. "They're judging us like they own us," she whispered to herself. Keanu arrived quietly at her door, holding a small bag of pastries from her favorite bakery. When she opened the door, her eyes were already red. He stepped inside without asking questions, setting the bag on the counter. "You haven't eaten," he said softly. Her voice broke.
Keanu, how can you be so calm?
"Don't you see what's happening? They've turned us into a story they can't control." He looked at her gently. "I've lived with noise all my life. But noise is not truth. Truth is what we carry here." He placed his hand over his heart. "And here," he added, touching hers. Her tears fell freely as she leaned into him. "I want to believe that, I do. But what if the storm doesn't stop? What if it ruins us before we even begin?" Keanu's voice lowered, calm but steady. "Then we will face it together. Storms are not meant to be faced alone." Their bond deepened in those moments, but the storm outside grew harsher. Paparazzi began waiting outside Sandra's home. Reporters camped near Keanu's apartment. Every time they stepped out, cameras followed. Questions shouted. The hook came one evening when they attended a private gathering for a close friend. They had promised each other it would be quiet, a place to escape the chaos. But even there, whispers followed them. Sandra noticed a group of guests watching them closely, their voices low but sharp. "Do you think it's real?" one asked. "Or just a game for the cameras?" another added. Her chest tightened. She tried to focus on Keanu's steady presence beside her, but the words cut deep. Later that night, when they walked to the car, she broke down. "Keanu, they don't believe in us. They think it's a performance. How do we live when everyone doubts?" He stopped walking, turning to face her under the glow of a streetlight. His eyes were calm but fierce. "Sandra, listen to me. We don't live for them. We live for us. Respect, kindness, love. These things don't need permission from the world. They only need courage." Her heart softened at his words, but before she could answer, a new challenge arrived. A rumor appeared the very next day, claiming someone close to them had inside information that their relationship was nothing more than a publicity stunt. The headlines were cruel, the voices even louder. Friends called asking if it was true. The doubt spread quickly, filling every corner of their lives. Sandra's fear reached its peak. She sat with Keanu in her living room, her voice trembling. "If the world believes this lie, everything will fall apart. How do we prove what's real when they don't want the truth?" Keanu leaned closer, his voice carrying a quiet power. "We don't prove it to the world. We prove it to each other. And if our hearts are steady, no lie can win." Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded slowly. "Then promise me one thing," she whispered. "Promise me you won't let go, no matter how heavy this gets." He held her hands, his gaze unshakable. "I promise. I will not let go." That night, as the storm outside grew louder, their bond grew deeper. But in the shadows, someone was pushing the rumor further, determined to break them. And the true test of their resilience was only beginning. When shadows stepped forward, the days after the rumor felt like walking through a storm without an umbrella. Every headline screamed their names. Every photograph was twisted into meaning something it did not. The sweetness of their bond was now trapped under the weight of doubt. The hook came one morning when Sandra's phone rang. It was her friend, her voice shaking. "Sandra, I think I know who started the rumor. It's someone from your past. Someone who once felt left behind." Sandra's heart sank. She already had a name in her mind before her friend even said it. An old colleague. Someone who had once been close but had grown bitter over the years. She whispered, "Why would they do this?" "Because envy has sharp teeth," her friend replied. When Sandra told Keanu, he sat in silence for a long time. His eyes were calm, but his chest was heavy. "It doesn't surprise me," he said finally. "Shadows often come from those we once trusted." Sandra's voice trembled. "What if people believe them more than they believe us? What if the world never sees the truth?" Keanu reached for her hand, his voice steady. "The world may not see the truth, Sandra, but I do. And that is enough." His words gave her strength, but the storm did not stop. The person behind the rumor stepped into the spotlight, giving interviews, speaking boldly. They smiled for the cameras, weaving lies with confidence. "It's all for attention," they said. "They're just playing with people's emotions." The crowd ate it up. The gossip spread like fire. The breaking point came when Sandra received a call from her manager. "Studios are worried," the manager said. "They think this scandal will overshadow your work. They want you to make a statement, either deny it all or walk away from him." Her heart dropped. She hung up the phone and sat in silence, her body trembling. Keanu found her like that, her hands covering her face. "What happened?" he asked gently. Her voice cracked. They want me to choose. They want me to protect my career by leaving you. Keanu's chest ached. He sat beside her, his voice soft. Sandra, I will never ask you to choose me over your dreams. If walking away from me protects you, I will accept it. Her head shot up, her tears spilling. How can you say that? Because love is not about holding someone down, he whispered. It's about setting them free, even if it breaks you. She shook her head fiercely. No, Keanu. I won't let them take this from us. I won't let lies win. Her voice trembled but carried strength. I choose you, not because the world doubts us, but because my heart knows you, and that is enough. His hand touched her cheek, his eyes filled with a softness that steadied her trembling. Then we face this together, he said quietly. Later that week, they made their first public appearance since the rumors began. Hand in hand, they stepped into the crowded hall of a charity event. Cameras flashed wildly. Questions filled the air, but they did not let go of each other. The person who spread the rumor was there too, watching them with a smirk, waiting for cracks to show. But instead of cracks, the world saw something stronger. Two people standing side by side, their silence more powerful than any lie. The night ended with Sandra leaning close to Keanu, whispering softly, "We survived tonight, but I know the hardest test is still coming." And she was right, because in the shadows, the bitter voice was not finished. They had one more move to play, and it would push Keanu and Sandra into the deepest storm of all. The breaking point, the night of the charity event, had shown their unity, but the shadow behind the rumor was not ready to stop. In the days that followed, the lies grew sharper, the stories darker. Television hosts debated their love as if it was a game, and strangers online decided who was right and who was wrong without ever knowing their hearts. The first hook came one afternoon when Sandra received an envelope at her home. There was no name, no return address. Inside was a photo of her and Keanu leaving the cafe weeks earlier, with the words scribbled across the picture in bold black ink. This will end badly. Her chest tightened as she stared at it. She felt fear crawl into her veins, but also anger. She called Keanu immediately. When he arrived, she placed the photo in his hands. They're not just trying to ruin us in the public eye anymore, she whispered. They're trying to scare us. Keanu's jaw tightened, his fingers curling around the paper. Fear is their weapon, he said calmly. But we cannot let it break us. But fear had already started to creep in. Sandra struggled to sleep at night, the weight of constant attention and hidden threats pressing down on her. One evening, as she sat on the couch with Keanu, she whispered, "Maybe we should end this. Not because I want to, but because I don't know how much more I can take." Keanu turned to her, his eyes steady and filled with quiet fire. "Sandra, listen to me. Love is not built only for easy days. It is built to endure storms. Yes, this is hard. Yes, the world is loud, but I believe in us. If we let them push us apart now, then we give them exactly what they want." Her eyes filled with tears. "But what if staying together destroys everything we've worked for?" His hand cupped her cheek gently. "Then at least we know we chose love over fear, and that is a choice worth everything." The turning point came days later, when the person behind the rumor made their biggest move yet. During a live interview, they boldly claimed, "Keanu and Sandra are only pretending. I know this because I was close to them once. This is nothing but a performance to stay relevant." The clip spread instantly, cutting through news outlets and social media like fire. The world demanded a response. That night, Keanu and Sandra sat in her living room, the weight of the world pressing down on them. Sandra's voice broke. "Keanu, maybe silence isn't enough anymore. Maybe we have to speak." Keanu looked at her, his silence heavy, his thoughts deep. Finally, he nodded. "Then we speak. But not for them, for us. For truth." They agreed to appear together at a press conference for a charity they both supported. The hall was filled with reporters, cameras flashing like lightning. The first question was sharp. "Are you two faking this relationship?" Sandra's heart raced, but Keanu took her hand, steadying her. He leaned into the microphone, his voice calm, respectful but unshakable. "No, this is not a performance. This is our life. We may not owe the world every detail of our hearts, but we will not let lies define us. What we have is real. It is built on respect, kindness, and years of trust. No rumor can erase that." The hall grew silent, the weight of his words hanging heavy in the air. Sandra then added, her voice trembling but strong, "I will not apologize for loving someone whose heart is full of humility and strength. If the world doubts us, let them. But we know the truth, and that is enough." Applause broke out from some corners of the room, surprising them both. Even reporters who had doubted them seemed moved by their honesty. That night, as they walked away from the flashing lights, Sandra whispered, "We did it. We stood together." Keanu's eyes softened, his hand tightening around hers. This was only one battle. But the war isn't over yet, and he was right. Because even as they found strength in their truth, the person behind the rumor prepared one final strike. One move that would force them to fight harder than ever for the love they had chosen. Love that could not be broken. The days after their press conference felt lighter at first. Some voices softened, some doubters grew quiet, and for a short time Keanu and Sandra breathed easier. But shadows do not fade so quickly. The person behind the rumor had one last move, and it struck harder than either of them expected. The first hook came one evening when Sandra's assistant rushed into her home, holding a tablet with breaking news. They released a private letter, the assistant said, her face pale. "A letter you once wrote years ago to a close friend, about loneliness, about wanting something more than friendship with Keanu. They are saying you staged everything to make your words come true." Sandra's chest tightened as she read the letter on the screen. Her words, written in a moment of honesty long ago, now twisted into fuel for gossip. "This was never meant for the world," she whispered, her hands trembling. Keanu arrived within the hour, his face calm though his eyes burned with quiet anger. She handed him the tablet, her tears spilling. "They've taken my truth and turned it into a weapon." He set the tablet down, gently cupping her face. "Listen to me, Sandra. Words cannot be weapons unless we let them. This letter only shows what you felt, your heart speaking honestly. There is no shame in that. The shame belongs to the one who exposed it." But Sandra shook her head.
Keanu, what if people believe I used you?
"What if they think our love is just a script I forced into life?" Keanu leaned closer, his voice low and unshakable. "Then we remind them with every action, every step, that love cannot be staged. Love is lived." The next day, instead of hiding, they walked into a public event together. The cameras flashed wildly. Voices shouted, questions cut through the air. Sandra's heart raced, but Keanu's steady presence beside her kept her grounded. Then, in a moment no one expected, Sandra stopped walking. She turned to the crowd of reporters, her voice trembling at first but then growing stronger. "Yes, I once wrote about wanting more with Keanu. Yes, I once feared speaking my truth. But tonight I will say it again, not in a letter, not in secret, but here in front of the world. I love him. I love him not because of fame or image, but because of the man he is. Kind, humble, strong, and real. No rumor, no lie, no betrayal can take that away." The crowd gasped, flashes exploding like fire. Keanu stepped forward, his hand gently resting on hers. He added softly, "And I love her. Not because of her words, but because of her heart. We are not perfect. We do not claim to be. But what we have is real, and that is enough." The moment carried across the world. Videos of their confession spread quickly. Not as gossip, but as inspiration. People spoke less about the rumor and more about the courage it took to stand in love despite the storm. That night, as they sat together on Sandra's balcony, the city lights glowing below, Sandra whispered, "We survived the fire." Keanu's arm wrapped around her shoulders, pulling her close. "We didn't just survive," he said softly. "We grew stronger. Storms cannot break what is built on truth." She leaned against him, her heart finally at peace. "One sweet date," she whispered, smiling faintly. "And look where it brought us." Keanu smiled back, his eyes warm. Closer than ever. And so their story ended not with silence, but with voices. Two hearts speaking clearly, refusing to be broken by lies. Standing in love that proved stronger than any storm. The world would always remember that one sweet date, not as a small evening hidden in the shadows, but as the night that began a love powerful enough to be heard everywhere.